just make it
2-2.
Okay, good morning. I'll call the Oakland County Board of Commissioners Public Service Committee to order, and with that, roll call, please.
Spiz is absent with notice. Jackson?
here.
Berman?
Here.
Teets is absent with notice. McGilvray?
Here.
And Dwyer.
Here. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, and I'll ask for a motion for the approval of the minutes from the July 10th, 2018 meeting, moved by Commissioner McGilvray, supported by Commissioner Jackson. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, same sign. Thank you. Now I'll ask for approval of the agenda as amended, moved by Commissioner Berman, supported by Commissioner McGilvray. Any questions? Deletions? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign, thank you. We'll now open it up for public comments. Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comments and move to our regular agenda. And our first item is Department of Public Services, Medical Examiner's Office, agreement with Jackson County. And this will be an automatic direct referral to the Finance Committee, and this is moved by Commissioner McGilvray, supported by Commissioner Berman. And we have with us, gentlemen,
Mark Newman, Director of Public Services, and I have Kaz Mayarka, the Administrator for the Medical Examiner's Office.
oh, welcome, good morning.
Thank you, sir. We have this opportunity, this request made to us by Jackson County to do some work for them, and Kaz has put together, along with other staff there, and working with the Corp Council contract, and I'll let him give you the details on that.
Very good.
Jackson County had contacted us because unforeseenly they were going to lose their morgue. So by that, they had reached out to us and asked if we would take on some of the work if needed. They made every attempt to find a temporary solution in Jackson County and were unsuccessful in locating anything. They reached out to us and we sat down and came up with a cost of $16.50 per autopsy. Jackson County is assuming a lot of the work of doing their own investigations, their own transportation costs. They are handling everything that we would normally do. So we took on we're willing to take on the case where it's not going to cause us to have to hire any more personnel to handle it, and we anticipate about 100 autopsies will complete. Their morgue should be done about January.
About 100 a year, is that what you're saying, annually?
They do 200 autopsies a year, but their new morgue should be completed by January of 2019.
I see.
So it's a temporary solution for them.
Very good. Any questions?
He answered mine.
Answer yours, okay. Seeing no questions, roll call vote, please.
Jackson?
Yes.
Berman?
Yes.
McGilvray?
Yes.
Dwyer?
Yes, motion carries. Any other comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our second item is the Friend of the Court fiscal year 2018 Access and Visitation Grant Amendment. Suzanne, good morning.
Good morning.
And this is moved by Commissioner McGilvray, supported by Commissioner Berman.
I'm Suzanne Hollier. I'm the director of the Front of the Court. This is a request to amend a contract that we have. It's a grant to fund supervised parenting time services. It's just pass-through funding that we receive from the State Court Administrative Office that actually comes from the federal government. It's used in Michigan to provide supervised parenting time services, and there's extra money available at the end of every fiscal year that other counties can't use that they make available to us, which we always have a demand that far exceeds our funding. So because it's more than 15%, I'm here asking for this approval.
Okay, very good. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Berman?
Yes.
McGilvray?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Dwyer?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Our next item is the Sheriff's Office Contract Amendment Number 1 for law enforcement services in Lyon Township. And this will be an automatic direct referral to the Human Resources and Finance Committee, and this is moved by Commissioner Berman, supported by Commissioner Jackson.
Good morning.
Under Sheriff McCabe. And with you is?
Skaya. I think I introduced her at the last meeting. No?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, just making
You
sure.
did.
All right, okay.
Just wanted to confirm.
So,
Still here.
yeah, she's wondering about it now. It was a good career mover. The South Line School District has approached us. We currently have one deputy in South Line East. This would add a deputy at the high school and at the middle school in the city of South Lyon. And we're pleased to present this to you to add, as a result of everything that's going on in the world, obviously, they've taken some real proactive approach here. So if this is approved, we'll have 3 deputies that are working in the school district in
Great.
South Lyon.
Great, excellent. Any questions? Okay, see, Commissioner Berman?
Just to be clear, because I think we approved this previously, they compensate for those.
This is contracted, and
Yeah.
they reimburse it at 100%, as
Thank
all
you.
the contracted communities do.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
McGilvray?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Berman?
Yes.
Dwyer?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
I was just gonna ask you one question.
Yes, sir.
Under Sheriff McCabe. There's an article, or I've seen something on the news where the homicide rates are significantly up in certain areas in Oakland County. Is that?
Well, you know, there's, in Pontiac specifically, I think we've had
I think they did point out Pontiac.
12 homicides so far this year. We had 4 last year, but the year before we had 16.
Right.
So, you know, the 4 was kind of an anomaly in 2017. Every one of the homicides that have occurred so far in that community are directly related to either drugs or domestic violence. So there's not this big crime wave going on
Right.
out there where, you know, somebody's robbing people on the streets and killing them. Unfortunately, it is people that know each other, and some of them are for retribution and some of them for domestic violence type situations where, you know, they know in each and every instance, even though there's a couple we haven't solved yet, we have suspects. We know for a fact that it's people that have relationships with other people.
And we really
Overall violent crime in the city of Pontiac is down the first 7 months of this year compared to last year. So while there is a spike in homicides, armed robberies, CSCs, et cetera, assaults are all down.
Well, we really appreciate you clarifying that.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
We
Anything
do
else?
have a meeting with the mayor and Commissioner Bowman. You know, the sheriff has the sheriff's relations team in the city of Pontiac. So on Thursday, we're meeting with them. We're going to go over it and see if there's some other things we can do. But, you know, some of those things, there's no way to prevent them, as you know,
Exactly.
Commissioner.
Right. Very good.
Thanks for
Thank
asking
you
the
very
question.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to move to item 4, but before we do, I'm going to invite Commissioner Marcia Gertensen to join us at the table. The Commissioner's been on the Gun Violence Committee for about 5 years, ever since we formed that particular committee, so we're going to be going over these miscellaneous resolutions as it relates to some of the studies that we've conducted and some of the recommendations that the study committee has made. So appreciate you coming to the table, Commissioner.
Thank you for inviting me.
So our first item, miscellaneous resolution 18272, Board of Commissioners, and this is support from Michigan Legislature to provide funding to increase school safety measures to harden the security on all Michigan schools. And I think we have giving a report this morning. Gentlemen? Oh, I think we need a motion first, moved by Commissioner Berman, supported by Commissioner McGilvery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Morning.
These resolutions came about as a result of, I think you might recall, Sheriff Bouchard and his staff presented a list of recommendations to the commission and Chairman Gingell as well, way back in March and April. And we were requested as staff to begin to study those recommendations, take a look at them closely, begin some research. We have been doing that diligently as best as we can with the large amount of projects that you folks have been putting on our plates during that time, and then also working on other gun violence, gun safety, school safety issues as well during that time. And so this project here in this group, this package of resolutions, is a culmination of that work. That's what I'm speaking about, these resolutions, I guess, en masse. But so this resolution, this first one is introduced by Commissioner Kowal. And Mike, I don't know if you want to address this one specifically, if this was one you drafted.
Yes, in this particular resolution that you have before you with 18272 is a resolution that is asking the state legislature to not only secure funding to harden our schools, but also to create single points of entry at the schools and draft some comprehensive initiatives at the state level to provide a safer environment within our schools as far as when it comes to security. So that would include taking a look at the exits, the entrances, the hallways, the doors, and providing any kind of comprehensive analysis from the state level to provide funding for those particular security measures. So.
Commissioner Gershenson.
Well, no, obviously I think it's great, and my purpose here is to try to find something that we can take to the Gun Safety Committee, so it's just not a non-binding resolution that goes up there where they don't have the funding, or I don't know where the legislature, but maybe if your brother wins the election, you can muscle some money down here, but the single point of entry, I think that the Gun Safety Committee could do something on, just in terms of publicizing that. The mental health services is kind of more problematic. I'm not sure how we could work to increase that in our community. But certainly those are the 2 points that perhaps maybe we can take to the Gun Safety Committee, would be the single point of entry and the mental health services.
Well, I agree, and we've studied. We started our study with Sandy Hook, as you recall, and I just recently met with students from Lincoln High School in Warren, and the greatest concern they have today is their safety. They're concerned about going to school and trying to learn, but they're more concerned about someone coming in and taking them out, quite frankly. So moving along as far as better security in the schools is absolutely what we need. It should be the #1 priority by the state and by the federal government. If you have to fortify the schools, then you fortify them. But these students are at risk, and as I said, they're concerned every day they go to school. And with the school starting up next month, or the month in September, I think this should be a priority by the state and by the federal government.
Like Ken, on the issue of mental health, there were additional recommendations in the sheriff's report. We weren't able to get to all of them. So this has been a work in progress. Mike and Connie have been working very hard on this for a long period of time, and there had to be a point in time where we said, okay, this is as much as we can do.
Sure.
And we have 8 resolutions here before.
Well, you've done a great job, Mike and
Yeah,
Connie. We applaud you for that.
There will be more coming, but on those issues of mental health, there were some specific, very important issues in there as related to concealed weapons and the lack of interactivity with HIPAA, specifically on the mental health issue and funding on mental health issues. I expect that we'll have some additional mental health related resolutions that will be coming
Great,
before the
and
board.
I guess my only suggestion is, well, if we could just turn some of that back to the committee, that maybe we could actually take some action.
Message has been received and will be
Yep.
shared with the chairman of the board, and
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please. Thank you, gentlemen.
Jackson.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
McGilroy.
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes, motion carries. Our next item is miscellaneous resolution 18273, Board of Commissioners support of Michigan's legislative reform, raising the penalty for concealing an unregistered firearm, and our presenter is Commissioner Nancy Quarles. Oh, I'm sorry. Gentlemen, I see Nancy here too.
Actually, I
Oh, we
believe
need a
this is,
motion. Moved by Commissioner Berman, supported by Commissioner Jackson.
I believe this was sponsored by Commissioner McGilvray.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lead sponsor.
No, it's.
It's stated as a presenter for Commissioner Quarles,
Oh, yes.
but
you're
that
Oh.
was due
sorry.
to
Okay.
general government's
Oh, okay.
filings.
Thank you for the
No
clarification.
problem.
So this is McGilvery?
Yes. I understand that in general government, it was changed from unlicensed firearm to unlicensed handguns. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Actually, no, if I may clarify that as well. So in general government, this particular resolution supported Michigan legislative reform, raising the penalty for concealing. Initially, it was an unregistered firearm. That was actually amended to concealing a pistol without a license due to the CPL laws and that aspect of it. We wanted to clarify with this resolution the title. Within the body of the resolution, it doesn't necessarily state unregistered firearm. We do get into stating the actual MCL and the statute that states the increase in the penalty for those individuals who violate the law from 5 to 6 years. But in particular, let me just see if I can get it here, the penal code, states a person shall not carry a pistol concealed without a license. So that's what the actual statement in the statute is, so we wanted to reflect that in the title.
Very good.
The reason for the amendment being that some of the questions we had from commissioners when the resolution was circulated for introduction was the firearms that need to be registered under Michigan law are handguns, pistols.
Okay.
It's so shocking, that's the only one that needs to be registered.
Another issue I know that is of concern for gun safety.
Something we'll look at
Study.
again. Any other questions?
We got a motion yet?
Yeah. mhm. Seeing no other questions, we'll call the roll.
Berman,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is miscellaneous resolution 18274. Board of Commissioners support for legislation to prioritize and allocate funds for school resource officers in Michigan schools. And this is moved by Commissioner Jackson, supported by Commissioner McGilvery.
Mr. Chairman, I think I could speak briefly on this one. This one was introduced by Commissioner Bowman, who spoke on this issue in general government. I think this is particularly, hits home hard for him in the city of Pontiac, where this has been an issue, but I think for all of you as well in your districts where school resource officers are hard to come by. Everybody would like to see more resources directed for your schools. I think the undersheriff, I think we've lost him, but we'd love to see the state provide more funding and support for school resource officers. And I recall we sent up a resolution a couple years ago after the initial report from Public Services Committee on this issue, and I believe we only had funding for 1 or 2 officers provided for the entire county. So, seeing another resolution come up from the Board of Commissioners would be, I think, a welcome sign.
I can speak on behalf of law enforcement because I'm currently back in law enforcement, and it is a major problem. I'll give you an example. At Lincoln High School, we have 1 resource officer. It's not enough. I'm meeting with the superintendent in 2 weeks to talk about how we're going to be able to fund a second for that particular school because it's a major problem in that particular school. So they don't have the funding. They do pay for an officer to go in for 9 months. When they recess, the officer comes back, is put in patrol. But funding should be a priority for school resource officers. I'm very familiar with them for the last 20 years, being in Farmington Hills, now in Warren. They have such a positive effect as far as a deterrent, being able to de-escalate things and making the schools safer. Without the school resource officers, we have major problems right now. You'd have more. That's all I have to say. Any other comments?
Is that federal money or state?
No,
money?
it's state.
State?
The school districts take it out of their budget for the 9 months. And then sometimes it's matching funds too by law enforcement, but in many cases the school absorbs that 9 months having that school resource officer or liaison officer in the school.
Yeah, I do recall they started this program a couple of years ago because we went through this when you passed your initial report, and there was a grant program passed, and I do believe there was only 1 resource officer provided for the entire county.
Yeah. Keep in mind too that the resource officer is only in the high schools. They're also responsible for the feeder schools, the middle schools, and the elementary schools. So you're talking about
Right.
one officer maybe handling up to 5 to 7 schools, including the middle schools and elementary schools.
Right.
Mhm.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Jackson.
And so one of the commissioners from Southfield, I just would like to say on record that our current chief of police, at the beginning of his career, he was a school resource officer, and he credits that to
Yep.
be, what helped him, to just embrace the community and the community to embrace him. I'm glad that you clarified that this funding, comes from the schools, and, even though, law enforcement can supplement it, but that funding is needed to educate. So anything we can do to help educate our students without siphoning money off and provide them safety is a good deal. It's a good
Very
resolution.
good. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
McGilvray?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Berman?
Yes.
Dwyer?
Yes, motion carries. Next item is miscellaneous resolution 18278, Board of Commissioners, Board of Michigan's legislative reform, raising the penalty for incidents involving a stolen or unregistered firearm, and this is moved by Commissioner Berman, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. And we have Commissioner Nancy Quarles joining us. Morning, Commissioner.
Morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak on it with the help of the staff. This is part of the series, and it's involving stolen or unregistered, although the title is reading firearms. We did amend it in general government to be more specific as handguns. Firearms should be handguns, and I think you have a copy of that. Again, safety is the issue, and removing those who are carrying stolen or unregistered handguns off of the streets, so that we want to see I should say we want to encourage the legislature to strengthen Public Act 328.
Very good. Questions? Okay, no questions. We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Jackson?
Yes.
Berman?
Yes.
McGilvray?
Yes.
Dwyer?
Yes. Motion carries. Anything to add, Commissioner?
No, just thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item is miscellaneous resolution 18281, Board of Commissioners, support of Senate Bill 983, School Emergency Operation Plan. And this is moved by Commissioner Jackson, supported by Commissioner Furman.
Thanks for coming, Nancy.
Okay, Chris?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is introduced by Commissioner Kokendorfer, and is a little bit of a slight change in the recommendation from Sheriff Broussard, initial recommendations. The initial recommendation was requiring schools to conduct annual active shooter training, and some of the research done by staff and some of the discussions we've had with commissioners, including yourself, Mr. Chair, regarding the practicality of having active shooter training. We took a little bit of a different tack with this. This particular legislation requires schools to have an annual school emergency operations plan, which requires the schools to work with emergency services, different law enforcement organizations, to have a plan in place annually, and work with those organizations to coordinate, make sure everything is in order, and perhaps to have those active shooter trainings, but basically to work on a local level to make sure something's appropriate that works for the local community. There was some question whether it's practical, whether it's appropriate in every circumstance to have an active shooter training. So that was why we decided to take a slightly different tack than what was recommended initially by the sheriff. So this particular legislation has passed the Senate unanimously, pending in the House on the school emergency operations plan. I believe currently there's a recommendation in the law that they have a school emergency operations plan, but there's no regulatory penalty for not having one. So this provides, I think, within the school funding mechanism within the law, basically, there's a penalty function that requires them to do so.
Commissioner Gershenson.
So, schools are required to have a plan. All schools, all districts.
Yeah.
Okay. But, within that plan, if there's any suggestions made, like another resource, officer, if there's no funding, it's just a plan.
Right.
Okay.
I will only add that any type of a school emergency operational plan should be a priority. And the schools should, and most of them are, working with their local law enforcement or their sheriff's department to implement these plans. I know that it's an ongoing priority where I'm at now with all of the schools, and the school superintendents and the principals are all totally involved and committed, because they, as I said earlier, priority is having safe schools where students go and learn and not worry about having their lives taken.
What I think is, if I may,
Go ahead.
important to note on this particular issue is that, I'd rather have a plan, even if you don't have the perfect or right amount of resources in the event that, there is an incident, right? So at least, they understand, the analysis. What are our strengths in this, building? What are our potential weaknesses, and how do we react and respond to a potential incident, considering, the resources we may or may not have. Just so better prepared than not prepared.
Right, exactly. Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. I just want to say, in this resolution, what's the highlight for me is that it's, the plans will be recommendations and acted out at the local level, because we know, of course, that this county is huge, and gun safety issues, actions, occurrences vary. I'm happy to see that it addresses an action plan for our schools, but at the same time, I think as gun safety committee that we kind of look at this, because it is a recommendation, and we implement it as a service that could be offered city residents wide, like we do our storm training, in case of inclement weather and bad storms. That it's something we really should offer, because in my community of Southfield, there have been, shootings in parking lots, social clubs and things like that, that we just really need to know how to react in these situations. So I'm all for this, and I just hope that we can expand it as a gun safety committee for our residents, the whole.
Yeah, thank you. I think that that was sort of the feedback that we took, that we decided to take a different tack with this than the requirement of the active shooter training, that there's probably a different approach that makes sense in different communities. And, we often talk about home rule as a county commission, and respecting those differences in different communities. And so that's why we thought this would be a better approach for the commission to consider.
And then a lot of these issues are cultural, and what is, the discussion is in the home. So when we engage, like we learned from Beaumont Hospital when they were here, when we engage the whole family, it creates results, good results.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so, Commissioner Gershenson.
I just wanted clarification from Commissioner Jackson. So this is talking about a school emergency plan, but are you suggesting more of a community?
Community awareness and education. Schools, it would be like a step-by-step, I guess, plan to take in an active shooter situation. But I just think our residents need to be exposed to the training in case they ever find themselves in that situation. And I speak from, my upbringing. I've been in several active shooter situations. And all I can say is it's something that's needed. It creates a panic, and we can address it.
Commissioner Berman.
So on that note and related, is interesting, my thought, what I've gathered from this is, if there is an incident at a school or somewhere close by, it would be good to educate the community and, or more importantly, parents to how to react and how to respond, and not necessarily go drive your car to the school and potentially cause a challenge to the police that are trying to keep the situation under control. So, maybe a component of the plan is to help, provide awareness of that plan to parents, so that they understand how to react and how to deal with a potential incident like this.
Mr. McGilvery.
I know in my community, we have a system called Nexel, where if you sign up for a tornado warning or water main break or whatever it might be, it buzzes your cell phone and lets you know there's a problem. It would be ideal to put that out to the public when there's an active shooter situation, so somebody's not going to walk into something like that. And I think that's, with technology the way it is, that's very possible at this point. So.
Commissioner Gershenson.
Well, Gary, just to expand on that, your community, Madison Heights, has Nexel?
Nexel.
Does my community have it?
No.
So do you have to pay to get it?
I'm assuming so, but I don't know exactly.
That'd be something interesting to find out.
Okay.
How do you spell it?
N-I-X.
I'm sorry.
N-I-X-L-E, Nixel.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
There's.
Okay,
there's
one second. What I'm going to do after we make this motion, I'm going to ask both of you gentlemen to come up, join us at the table. It's kind of unusual, but you've both been in law enforcement. You're retired from law enforcement. I want to hear some of your comments. But you want to come up now and you can make your comments and stay at the table, both of you gentlemen, and identify yourselves and the rank that you retired at and what department you retired from.
Tom Hardesty. I'm the current manager for Oakland County Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and I retired as the Deputy Director for Public Services from Auburn Hills Police.
Very good.
Casimir Majorca. I'm the administrator for the Medical Examiner's Office. I retired from the Auburn Hills Police Department as a lieutenant after 26 years.
Thank you, gentlemen. Go ahead.
As I say, Nixel, Auburn Hills, we both used it when we were there. It's a free version that some communities can use for notification. It does involve, it's an opt-in service. It has some benefits. People can pick whether they want to get what level of messages, for instance, traffic updates or just emergencies. And then we do have, here at the county, we have Oak Alert, which is also an opt-in system, but that's more specific for Oakland County, not for each community. I will say briefly, I'm now sitting on a work group for the state that is examining the emergency alert system, including emergency notification system, and updating that entire system statewide, particularly when you start talking about cell phone emergency notifications like Amber Alert and how we might use that for other situations. So I just joined that work group just last week. So hopefully we can continue to update that.
And I would just like to add that the Nixel system is free to the community. It's the community that's providing the service that pays for it. So Auburn Hills had Nixel. They pay for that service, but any community member, whether you live there or wherever you live, has access to it for free at any level of alert that you want. And it's a very good system. As you mentioned, should you have an active shooter situation, you can notify everybody, and the notifying agency can determine how far of the range that gets notification. So you can say 1 mile, 2 miles out from a school or business. So it's very popular when it's used like that. It just costs the community, and it's not very expensive, but I know they keep changing their plans as they go.
But you have to promote it to get people to opt in.
Exactly.
Well,
You
right?
have
So that's
to-
the
That's
challenge, as
always
opposed
the-
to an Amber Alert where I didn't have to opt in to get that notification.
Right, it
Correct.
reads it based on your location.
Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Well, could
Commissioner Gershenson.
could we find out which one of our communities doesn't have it, and maybe we could take that to our communities? Maybe the commissioners could take it.
We can determine that. Tom, did you have something to add before
I would say we're also evaluating, Oak Alert is the title we put on it, but we contract with a company that provides ours. We're looking, that contract's coming up, looking to reevaluate. One of the options out there is a company like Everbridge, which actually owns Nixel, where we could purchase a service and then in turn offer it to each community. to opt into it, but it gets, it does get, those
Like
bigger
that.
systems are, well, they're pretty expensive. I mean, we're talking in excess of $100,000 for a community the size of Oakland County. So there's a whole process for that, but they are expensive.
Okay.
You
So
know,
we're gonna move
maybe,
right on, go ahead, Tom.
I was just
Commissioner?
gonna say that may be an item that we can put on our, agenda for our study group, and potentially we can find funding or support or subsidies for a program like that.
But mass notification systems and
Yeah.
how quickly and accurately you can get that information out there
Yeah.
is the key, trying to combat the, we also got to be ready on Twitter, because the reality is false information is going to come out there.
Okay, we're gonna call the question now. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Berman,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes, motion carries. You gentlemen are welcome to stay. We're gonna move on to number 9, miscellaneous resolution 18283, Board of Commissioners, support for the implementation of early warning security measures to curb the threat of gun violence for our students, and this is moved by Commissioner Berman, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. You wanna-
So I'll jump in only
Sure.
because, I think this is one
It's
that.
yours, right.
I'm
You're
introducing.
You're
and supporting.
introducing it, I'm sorry.
I unfortunately wasn't able to be here at GG yesterday, but I understand that it was passed unanimously. We've talked about this at our gun safety study committee, or study board, whatever. What do we call it?
Study committee.
Group. And this piqued my interest early on when it was addressed, only because I think this is, a very important measure that we can potentially take in the instance that an active shooter is active in a community, in a school, and that this is potentially something very realistic that we here can support and find funding for, besides urging, the state to do that. So, I think it's pretty obvious, and I'm happy to hear that it was passed unanimously at GG.
Any questions? Any comments?
Just
Okay.
to follow up on that,
Chris?
adding on to Commissioner Gershensen's comments, I think there's additional language in here that calls on the legislature to provide additional funding for some of those building maintenance and items to follow up on that school emergency operations plan. So
Yeah.
we're not just calling on the stick, there's the carrot as well.
Right.
Sure.
Other capital improvements, building
Yeah,
maintenance,
yeah,
yeah.
we want the funding, not just the penalties.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, roll call vote, please.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is miscellaneous resolution 18284, Board of Commissioners, support of safe school environments for Oakland County students. This is moved by Commissioner Jackson, supported by Commissioner McGilvery.
Mr. Chairman, this one was introduced by Commissioner Fleming, and it speaks really more to the preventative piece of the picture here. It's asked for funding for resources for anti-bullying, other preventative resources on campus. Mike, if you want to speak more to it.
Mainly it's for resources to prevent, like Christopher said, anti-bullying, harassment, discrimination, but also including the gun violence aspect to it within our schools, just to keep the environments more of a learning environment than within the security measures that this would provide as funding from the state. If you're noticing kind of a theme here and something that's, with one, it rolls into, with one resolution rolls into another, where we're kind of reiterating to the state that, funding would be necessary for us to really provide this type of environment for our children and providing them that safe learning environment. So,
I really want to applaud you, Mike, and Connie for all the work you've put into these 11 different miscellaneous resolutions. Commissioner Gershensen?
I was just gonna say, this one actually calls for, local groups to work on this. So this one isn't just sending it up there. This one actually calls for us to work on it.
Yeah, and it does, and also within the comprehensive safety plan that I think is at the state level right now, gets into some of these measures. So this again is just, you know, the more that we can reiterate it, I believe to the state level, or this commission can reiterate it to the state level, then hopefully some action will be taken there. And, you know, in your 2013 report, this was calling upon the state legislator to do something was one of the major initiatives that
Very good.
That was
Very good.
that came out of that. So.
Any other comments? Oh, Commissioner
Just,
Gilbert.
just one comment. I don't know if it pertains to this particular resolution, but in some situations when there's a, for example, a robbery, and it's near a elementary school or a high school or whatever it might be, they'll have a lockdown in the school.
Every day.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if we can't somehow have our police departments have a officer stand in front of a school just to guard that school during those situations. Not all the time, obviously, but I worry about if there's an active shooter in the area that just robbed a store, maybe 3 blocks away or whatever, wouldn't it be beneficial to have an officer stationed in front of the school to kind of keep an eye on things for the school?
Well, when that alert, and Tom helped me out with this, when that alert comes out and there is, the schools are shut down, the officers do respond to the schools and, you know, prioritize as far as, you know, where they're going to be stationed to protect that school and the neighborhood. Tom?
And depending on the community and what staffing
Right.
they have, if they have 2 officers on the road and there's a gunman over here, that's where
Right.
those 2 are gonna go
Yeah.
first. And if they don't have a third one to put at a school, they're probably not gonna have the ability. And I'll go back to
Right.
your support for school resource officers whose focus in the school and know that school and know who's there. That's probably the best way to hope to have somebody that you
Mhm.
know is gonna be there.
And
Good
the only
point.
reason I bring it up is there was a situation in my community where school was in lockdown, and they were locked down for 5 hours, and there was never a police officer anywhere in sight, and I guess it just occurred 2 blocks away or
Well,
something.
in most cases, if there is a school liaison or resource officer handling, you know, the high school, middle schools, elementary, he'll, in his orders, he has a responsibility to actually go to that particular school, if he's at a high school, he'll leave the high school to go to that middle school, if that's where it's at. Correct, Tom?
Yes, I'd agree, absolutely.
Yeah, except in the situation where you said
don't
there's
have
no
them.
resources
Yeah.
available. You know, if they've got 2
Well-
men on the road, then.
Well, normally you would ask for, you know, mutual aid. You'd ask for departments adjacent to your city to come in, or and even the sheriff's department. So mutual aid in a lot of these lockdowns are utilized.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be, who's ever commanding that scene, it's gonna be up to them to make that request for that assistance.
Mhm.
But it's certainly something you can encourage them to do and
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah.
And that's what getting into the planning, the good part of that other legislation about making them all sit down together, the police and the schools, and work on those plans.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Jackson.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes, motion carries. Our last resolution, and these are really great. I'm really pleased that a lot of these, what we're going through, are results of really the Gun Violence Committee meeting over the last 5 years. So, saying that, it's miscellaneous resolution 18285, Board of Commissioners, support of Michigan legislature reform, enhancing the penalties for lost, misplaced, and stolen firearms. And this is moved by Commissioner Berman, supported by Commissioner McGilvery.
Mr. Chairman, this resolution was introduced by Commissioner Taub, was again one of the recommendations of the Sheriff's Office. These were presented to you in the order which they were introduced. It kind of flows a little bit with the resolutions introduced by Commissioner McGilvery and Commissioner Quarles. It's a little more related to combating gun violence rather than the school safety resolutions. I know in our research as staff, the issue of gun crimes being committed with stolen weapons is really
Mhm.
a serious issue. And law enforcement really could use the assistance of people reporting those guns being stolen. So Sheriff's Office is, has asked the legislature to take a serious look at increasing the penalties for those people who fail to report those firearms being stolen or misplaced, lost. And so Mike could speak a little bit more to the details.
To keep consistent with another initiative that this body and this board has brought forth with the Lock It Up Oakland campaign, in safely securing your firearms, this gets as another enhancement to that, where we're actually calling on the legislation to not only report your stolen firearms, but also your lost or misplaced ones, so that the local sheriff's office can be notified that there might be a weapon out there that could be used for a crime. I think currently the statute states that if it's stolen within 5 days, you have to provide notification to your local law enforcement. In this particular legislative reform that the sheriff and I think this body would support is to report that immediately. Also, I believe that it's currently a civil infraction. I think it's $2,500 or $2,500. They have to go back and see, but they would be calling on that to be a misdemeanor as well. So.
Commissioner Berman?
Okay, I guess you started to answer the two questions I had, which was, how do you define immediately? Immediately after you are aware that it has been stolen and or lost or misplaced. 5 days is what it is today. And what is today? It's currently a civil infraction and penalty of dollars, but not a misdemeanor.
Correct.
But we're encouraging or urging it to be modified and become a misdemeanor.
To enhance it to lost and misplaced as well as stolen, and then also to have that be a misdemeanor if that does not take place.
Immediately or within 5 days? Which one?
I think to me, it would be all encompassing where if they're not reporting that immediately, then they would look for those added penalties to be incurred.
I'm only interested in this because in my previous life, I was a criminal defense attorney for a short period of time. And I did come across a case where a firearm was lost. The guy got out of his car to pump gas, and as he was getting out of his car, it slipped off of his side that he was carrying, fell on the ground. He wasn't aware. It was then found immediately, was reported to the police. The police got it. They were the ones who called him before he even knew. Now, I don't know how he didn't know with it having been not on his side for a few hours, right? But, and they wanted to keep the gun and they wanted to charge him, with that civil infraction and monetary penalty. And so, the timing of it and, I don't necessarily believe that particular incident rises to the level of a misdemeanor, criminal matter. So I have a challenge with, an instance like that.
We'd be happy to have a discussion with you if you want to work through this out of committee and maybe find some language that would provide some protection for.
But that's
Look, in theory,
that's why you're a defense attorney.
Well, look,
Yeah.
I was.
Or
But in theory, well, look, I'm just trying to be objective, reasonable person, and in
I
theory,
understand.
I think the concept here is sound conceptually, right? Which is we want firearm, pistol owners to be responsible and not negligent, and we want them to, ideally, in some of these other situations, have registered, right, pistols to comply with the law. And if your pistol is lost, misplaced, and or stolen, to let the authorities know that has in fact been the case. So I get it. I just know, look, strict scrutiny, mandatory minimum, those are sometimes tough.
one of the
'Cause there's
beautiful
always
things-
mitigating
But you,
circumstances.
you know, Commissioner, that, you know, the law enforcement people, the detectives are going to
Not always
review the
be
circumstances.
reasonable.
Well, they're gonna review the circumstances, they're gonna present their findings to the prosecutor's office, and ultimately, the prosecutor's office will make a determination if they should be charged or not.
And as we know here, and important, I think, more good than bad, we have a strong and strict prosecution team.
So you can work on this one.
Yeah, we'll work on that. We'll
One
work
of the
on,
beautiful
but
things
thank you
about
very much.
Being a county
Thank you.
commission is you can write resolutions for a perfect world.
Sure.
And,
But, but I understand
you
what you're
don't- you
saying,
don't write
Tom.
laws.
You know,
I'm just trying to,
And I'm just, you know, but, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Jackson,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes, motion carries. We're gonna move on to, I wanna thank you, Tom and Cadmere, both of you, both retired deputy chief and lieutenant. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we have communications. I'll ask for a motion to receive and file the communications. Moved
I'll
by
move it.
Commissioner McGilvery, supported by Commissioner Jackson. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, is there any other business before we adjourn? Okay, seeing none,